What's up, guys? Little different format today. Got the wireless mics on in Jared's garage, so if you're just listening, it might sound a little different. Hopefully she's coming through crisp. But today we wanted to talk about our hunting rifles. Jared and I get hit up all the time asking what we have, what we recommend, what people should get. So we figured we would just run through our full kind of spectrum of hunting rifles over the last, maybe not the full last like 10 years, but I've got all mine listed out. Jared's got some of his here. We'll kind of bring some stuff up and down onto the table. If you guys are just listening, we'll have a little bit better visual on the YouTube channel as far as seeing some of our guns and what we're talking about. But
we've been through the whole gamut, I'd say. We've covered just about all the calibers. From starting out as kids hunting or when we were younger, and we've played around with a lot of stuff. One thing with mine, I think Zach probably builds a rifle and lets it stay together for a minute. I'll put a rifle together for a hunt and then pull it back apart and it turns into something else the next day. So I think I've got 3 rifles here. Plus, probably now's a good time to break out the OG. As a kid, my uncle bought me and my 2 brothers each. It's I think it's a Spanish Mauser if I remember right, but it's a 7x57 or 7mm Mauser. He cut the stock off short for us, and this is actually what I grew up hunting with, and part of what encouraged me to get better at shooting, because I lost a lot of animals or missed a lot of animals with this. Have yet to kill one.
I think we need to bust this thing out for a hunting film at some point. It's first and last kill.
100%. Either me or I'll force my kids to shoot it before I let them shoot one of our nice rifles. So that's where we started, and this was where we've ended up. So you want to kick her off with?
Yeah. I started shooting guns before I ever started hunting. My dad had some buddies that built guns, so I got to shoot some pretty nice firearms, nothing quite as rudimentary as that. I think some of the first guns I ever started shooting was like a 6.5 284 and a 6 284,
nice
custom bull barrel, jewel triggers, and then some AR-15s and just kind of your standard Ruger plinking kind of guns. Nice. As far as hunting rifles though, we won't dwell too long on the old stuff. I had a 6 284 that my dad had built for him by a buddy who he kind of handed down to us when we first got into it, and that was a sweet gun, super accurate. We shot 75 grain VMAXs, and my dad got taught how to reload, and I learned from my dad just very simple, learn how to get your brass ready to put a primer in it, or resize it, put a primer in it, drop powder, seed it to specs that my dad had come up with, however that happened, and then it kind of shot. So I think that was cool to start shooting kind of a custom gun and reloading and getting an idea what that was. I don't think it really clicked, or we didn't really try to progress for quite a while, but we just it worked. And so we did it. That gun was not very fun to carry in the field because the barrel was so heavy. Yeah. You put it on your shoulder and it just wanted to kick back. And when you're out in the field with your buddies, you don't like pointing your muzzle at anyone. So just trying to keep that thing on your shoulder was a pain. Obviously shooting coyotes, it was super accurate, pretty flat. Once you got it on shooting sticks or whatever, which back in the day we didn't use tripods, just either really tall bipods or actual, a trigger stick from Primo, shooting sticks. It was pretty dang accurate, so that was cool to shoot. I got a Seiko 7mm Rem mag, and I think that was where I first learned that lightweight, big cartridge calibers were very averse to becoming good with a rifle. 100%. If I made it 20 shots, that was a good day at the range because I would just get beat to death.
Did that have a muzzle device on it or?
No.
No, yeah.
That's just straight barrel, and it just kicked you and just beat you up.
I love a Seiko, man. The action, the trigger, like everything on a Seiko I love, but yeah, they're lightweight rifles, and a 7 rim mag is going to pound you.
The craftsmanship was nice, and the gun shot pretty well, but going from a heavy gun, small caliber to that was just like, nope. And so then we worked with Snowy Mountain Rifles on a gun build, and we built a 300 short mag, which would kind of come to be my like trusted and true weapon that I've for sure hunted the most with, killed the most animals, seen the most animals die with.
Featured in lots of films.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was I forget what the Manor stock was. It was a little heavier. It had the adjustable cheek piece, benchmark barrel, steel barrel. It had an old school Defiance action that was kind of white labeled for Snowy Mountain Rifles, jewel trigger, and we had the Vortex Razor HD, the original Razor, the 5 and 20 MOA on there, and that gun was, I think it was right around like 12 pounds. Shot super well. We were shooting 168 VLDs out of it, and I'd say like we were probably effective to 400 to 600 yards. We never really tried pushing it further than that, which that was a long shot back 10 years ago. Still is for sure.
Yeah.
We were super like, we can hammer at 6.
Yeah. Was that 12 pounds? Was that with a bipod or no bipod?
We didn't run a bipod.
You didn't run bipod. So it's a little heavier because now our rifles normally end up just shy of 12 with a bipod typically. So
it was probably an extra pound and a half than what I kind of will run now, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
Yep.
I mean,
it definitely had some extra weight. Like that adjustable cheek hardware was a lot.
Yeah.
It was just like unnecessary weight.
Yeah. The stock and the scope was kind of where you were picking up weight in that gun. But no bipod, just sling stud, and we'd throw it over our pack.
Nice.
The 168 Burger, the hunting VLD, not like a crazy high BC bullet, but it did work. I mean, that was kind of where I guess I fell in love with Burger bullets.
Nice.
And we almost never pulled them out. It was like 98% weight retention. It was like in fragments and just like that shock. When it hit the animal, just the shock and the wound channel that it would spread by actually like breaking up inside the animal, just
grenade in the vitals,
just about everything.
Yeah.
And then later on, I got into a Weatherby. I wanted to build a lightweight hunting rifle. I didn't know that much about guns, and I knew a guy working at Weatherby, and they obviously built lightweight hunting rifles. I thought that they were they'd positioned themselves as this gold standard.
Yep.
I quickly found out that gun didn't shoot worth like crap.
Yeah.
Like, didn't shoot. I tried all kinds of different Weatherby boxed ammo, went to the range multiple times. Again, 300 Weatherby mag in a Weatherby Mark V ultra lightweight. So it was probably like a 7 or 8 pound gun, 300 Weatherby mag. And I just fought that thing for months. And then I finally hit up Kevin at Weatherby and was like, dude, I cannot get this gun to shoot. Can I just send it back? And I guess the Weatherby 2 is like my first real encounter with factory action.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I got it, I thought something was wrong because it has such a heavy lug system that running the bolt, you almost couldn't keep your face on the gun.
It's a short bolt throw too, from what I recall. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to cock that firing pin, and then I think they probably have a heavier firing pin spring, and then you're trying to cock it over a smaller less degrees, right? So it's a steeper cocking ramp. And that's something we've talked about with custom actions even. There's a lot of options, but I think that all contributes to that heavy bolt lift.
Yeah. So I guess it was kind of at that point that I realized how important the custom action really was, because it's pretty tough even today, kind of to articulate it to someone, what's the difference between, a factory Tikka action and a Defiance custom action, for sure twice the price.
Yeah.
What are the advantages? I mean, obviously, if you're going to build guns like we are now, there's guaranteed headspace. So when we go to spin barrels on there, unless there's some crazy lightning bolt of a outlier, it's going to headspace well, don't have to worry about that. And then just the reliability and the smoothness of how you can run the action as far as getting on target, putting one in, staying on target, taking a shot, cycling a new round in and just keeping that sight picture.
Yeah.
As a hunter and as a precision shooter, it's just like, it's worth the extra money.
For sure. It's definitely like a user interface thing, isn't it? Because like Tikka's pretty consistent. There are guys that do pre-fits for them, and most of the time I think their actions are coming out
pretty good
within tolerance that you could pre-fit them. Definitely there's, to my knowledge, Tikka still is only one action length, and they changed the bolt stop so the bolt doesn't come back as far on the short actions. So it's really, to me, it's a user interface thing. And then we're extremely particular. Every gun that we build is built around a bullet, a caliber, which magazine we want to run, every little detail. And then at the end of the day, that user interface you're talking about, it's just like that bolt feel is going to be really slick. We black nitride all our actions, and it just gives it a certain feel that it's like, it feels like you're running a really nice quality, piece of equipment. And that's, at the end of the day, like, does it matter for killing stuff? Not really, but it feels great.
Yeah. I mean, it does matter if you miss.
Yeah.
You need to get a second shot and the animal's standing there.
That's very true, yeah. Maintaining your sight picture for sure.
The Weatherby, I had a Vortex Razor AMG on there, I did like that scope. I used to shoot MOA. It got water somehow inside the scope body, and Vortex is great about repairing it, but I lost some confidence in the scope at that point, which was honestly kind of, I think, I went from the OG Razor, like, bomb proof, always held 0. That thing only got knocked off one time when one of Travis's buddies actually fell on it, like on a rock, like gouged the scope.
Wow.
Other than that, like, we beat that thing up and it never lost 0. So it was like high confidence in a product. Then you go to something new and like something happens, you're just like, not that there's always a possibility that something could happen to any scope, but I think it made me want to try something else out, which I ended up transitioning over to Night Force. But yeah, so the first Weatherby, sent it back to Weatherby, and they were like, we can't get it to shoot either, because it was like the best I could get was 1.5 inches at 100, which is like,
with a lot of range trips.
Yeah. So I was like, thank God that like they found the same thing, that I wasn't just like one of those guys that was like, this thing won't shoot, send it back. So then they were coming out with some new rifles. I got their Weatherby, their Carbon Mark Pro, another 300 Weatherby mag, because I kind of wanted to go to the larger side of the spectrum as far as bullets. And, I think that's kind of what's been preached over the years, is like, bigger bullet, the better, like more energy, the better, like knockdown power, you can hit them wherever, yada, yada. So for that gun, I did shoot some factory stuff with it, and it didn't shoot, it maybe shot 1 inch, roughly. And so I started reloading, went through a whole reloading process, and settled on the Berger 215 hybrid targets.
Great bullet.
And I was able to get that gun to shoot 1/2 to 3/4 inches on average. It just seemed like if I wasn't, it would shoot great, and then I would shoot it not great. And I think what I learned later and didn't really notice at the time was just like, if I got on the gun right and drove it right and shot it right, like, it shot great. But if something was off a little bit, it just seemed like it would just kind of fly off. Which now we know, having shot, over 10,000 rounds between that period of time, it's just the big calibers in lightweight rifles. If you don't do everything ultra consistent and the same every time, like, it's just your point of impact's going to change easier than a smaller caliber and a slightly heavier rifle, which there's a happy medium there.
Yeah, it definitely exploits the flaws and fundamentals or consistency from shot to shot, the way like you said, the way you're driving a rifle. They're big calibers, light in a lightweight package, are just extremely difficult to be consistent with.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then it was we did a long range class at Tactic because we knew one of the instructors. And that was the first time I think I'd really been around a rifle with a suppressor on it.
Nice.
And it was literally watching that guy shoot his 300 Win Mag with a Thunder Beast. I was literally like, where did you get that can? And like, from there, I immediately went and bought a can from Cam.
Yeah.
And like a year later, got my first suppressor. Because you shoot those big guns with muzzle brakes, and dude, it is just the concussion and the ability to spend time around it. And we were obviously filming and photographing and just being around guns where you're not always behind them, out to the side. And it just was like suppressors was a game changer.
For sure.
So, so that was kind of before I got into, I think, building and being very thoughtful about my components. But you want to run through a little bit of your
catch up to kind of where, because this is like right where you and I started hanging out more, because you still had that 300 short and then the 300 Weatherby. So I'll catch us up to that same time period. So again, my 7x57 Mauser, old, I think it's a 98 Mauser, like a Spanish one, something like that my uncle did. After that, I went through a variety of things. I had in 2008, actually, the first gun I bought myself, I shot my dad's hunting rifles as a kid. And then I bought a 2008 Winchester Model 70 and 270 short mag. That thing, I thought was so sweet, man, the wood stock. And this is one of those funny things, like hunters were I feel like we've been slow to progress because we are so traditional. My dad hunted with the Winchester Model 70, so I got like the new one in the hot new caliber, the 270 short mag.
Yeah.
I hand loaded for that and ran, it was before I switched to AccuBonds, it was the ballistic tips, nozzler ballistic tips. I killed a deer with that rifle, and that thing, I was running a Leopold VX3 with just whatever. I think it was a straight duplex. There was like
no way involved.
At that time, I was really, for a long period there, I was really into max point blank range. So you sight it in to where, like, if you say you have a 6-inch kill zone, what's the farthest distance where if I aim center, that bullet's no more than 3 inches above the point I aim or 3 inches below. And so I was running those. I think I was running 130s, if I remember right, pretty fast. And I had like a 300-yard max point blank range. And again, it was like, we didn't have rangefinder. There was probably rangefinders around. I didn't own one at that time. And so my goal was just to be able to hold dead on as far as possible when you're trying to guess range. So had that for a while. It always had feeding issues, and I just like never got over the feeding. The first round went in really smooth. Second round every single time, because it's like the first round came kind of up from the right, and the second round coming up from the left. Something with the shape of those cases, they didn't have it dialed in, and I ended up selling that rifle. And then I went to a pre-64 Model 70. It was like a 1951 270 again. Shot that for a season or two, shot a deer with it. And then when I really started like going in off the deep end, I was like, oh, I'm gonna start. I think this was, my timing's a little bit off here, because it was around 2009 that I got Kimber, Montana. So it was a couple years, it was a few years before that I had that Winchester Model 70 that in short mag. But when I really went off the deep end, I got Kimber, Montana. Me and my brother, we bought 2 matching ones and 270, and the goal was to run 110 tip TSXs as fast as we possibly could. Again, for max point blank range. Yeah. And we were running those things at 3450, if I remember right, max load plus a little bit, and it was hot for sure. But we were able to, I think, with 3 inches high at 100, we were able to hold dead on out to 350. And yeah, that was interesting. Killed a deer with that thing. Killed it, and I actually had that my first year in Montana. Killed a deer here with it as well. Missed 2 antelope, and then finally got one killed with that same gun. And then
that thing had to be pretty light.
It was so light, man. Those Kimber Montanas, I still have a thing for them. They're sweet. I know everybody wanted the Mountain Ascent, but it was like $1,000 more, so I just bought the Montana. And then we did some funny, like we changed the bolt knobs on it, and there was some funny stuff that we did to that gun. But it was pretty sweet. No muzzle device, and yeah, I ran that for a while, and then after missing, and then I had this is the gun I was carrying. I had an elk at 550, I believe. It was 5 or 550, and there was just no way for me to cut the distance. Mm-hmm. So I sat there and watched him. He fed over the top, and then just never found him when we tried to catch up with him later in the day. And that's the year. That was 2017. And I was like, I'm learning this long range thing. I need to be able to shoot stuff at 500 yards, right? Out here in the West, you got to be able to shoot cross canyon. And that's when I found the whole precision rifle community here in Montana and Wyoming. Dove in deep on Tikkas. I bought a Tikka N65 Creedmoor T3X Light, and yeah, just shot that all year. I think I must have put a few thousand rounds on that gun that year. I threaded the barrel and so I could shoot it as a 6.5 Creedmoor. And there was like, I might not have put 5,000 rounds on that barrel. I ended up with 2 of those Tikkas. But the first one that I bought, I actually ended up, Glenn Demere's gunsmith and a mentor for long range shooting. We punched that barrel out as a stock Tikka 6.5 Creedmoor barrel, spun that off. We punched out to a 6.5 55 improved, which was, I don't know why, it was cool. It was my first like real wildcat, is a reamer of his design. And so I was running 147 ELDMs, and I put like a good year I shot a ton of matches that year, tons of practice. And I kept shooting. I had a 6.5 Creedmoor Tikka that I shot matches with. I ended up dropping it in a Manners stock. It's their PRS 1 stock with a mini chassis. But then my hunting rifle was just like a straight T3X that we had punched out to a 6.5 55 improved. I put a suppressor on. I got a suppressor as well as a Thunder Beast Ultra 7. And yeah, that year I shot a deer as longer than like I'd like to like advocate for, but it was off a tripod. It was the best mule deer buck I've shot still, is at 770 yards. And I remember like the gun was clamped into the tripod and I had a backpack under me, and literally like he turned broadside and I shot and I watched that bullet hit him and he dropped in a snow. He was late season and he slid down the hill, and I watched it all happen in the scope, and I was like, that's what I did all that work for. It felt great, man. So yeah, that was that Tikka was a really cool build. Unfortunately, I sold them both and went full custom after that. So that's where then I think I jumped into this guy, and this is still a year or 2 before we started hanging out a bunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was the first custom that I
did. You clean that stock up? It looks cleaner than it usually looks.
No, it's just been
2 of them.
No, it's just been sitting in the safe, man. It hasn't got used for a couple of years.
Looks like you got the buffer out.
Oh man, this is that first custom I built, and it is actually, I had one action. Again, back to me just changing things around all the time. This is an Impact 737 short action, and I got 2 bolts for it: a standard bolt face and a Magnum bolt face. So I ran this, and I played around with it. Like caliber wise, I've done a lot of just tinkering. I was shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor, a 647, 6 BRX, and all that on the standard bolt face bolt, and then I would throw it in a stock. It actually went in. There was another Manners before this, but this action I got the it's a 6.5 PRC barrel, a proof 24 inch, and I'd throw the Magnum bolt face in and throw it in whatever stock, and also I only had one scope at the time as well. It's an expensive hobby to get into. So I had a single scope. It was a Leopold Mark V, the 3.6 to 18, and it was a Tremor. Nope, it was a Tremor 3. Sorry, it was a Tremor 3 with all the dots. I had all the wind dots, all the stuff, and I'd throw it on. I'd configure all my stuff as a match rifle, and then the next day I'd pull it apart and throw it together, and it'd be a 6.5 PRC, and I'd go hunting with it. And then when there was a match mid hunting season, that made things really funny. Yeah, it was like I went to the PRS finale. With this guy. So I went to the PRS finale in 2019, and there was a big buck I was looking for, and I hunted all the way up till the day before. I got home at night, never found that buck. Threw the gun together and flew out the next morning with an unzeroed. And I get to the PRS finale late, and the zero board is shot all up. Dude, there is nothing to aim at. And I ended up on one of the 2x4s. There was a knot I could see, and I ended up zeroing off this knot at the PRS finale, like really setting myself up for success there. It was great. So,
so when did you like transition into like ballistic calculators for like going from point blank zero range or whatever, like
that was 2017. Yeah, so because I was into the max point blank range thing before that, and I bought my first rangefinder in 2017, but so that original scope, and it's like a lot of guys that read on Rock Slide and stuff will know there's a Bushnell LRTH and LRTS and LRHS from Bushnell 3 to 12. And they have I cannot remember the name of the reticle off the top of my head, but they're first focal plane, very inexpensive scopes. I don't think I've ever bought a new scope. That was every scope I've ever bought's been used off of Rock Slider Sniper's Eye. And so, yeah, bought that scope. That's the first year that I was competing. That same thing. Before I bought the Leopold Mark V, it was at Bushnell. And so I bought Mil-Dot ballistics off the app store, just some random ballistics app. And that's Glenn Dimmeray, man. That guy took me under his wing and made my learning curve very, very easy, because in a very short amount of time, I was very dialed on my dope being just about perfect all the time. So that was 2017, 2018 that I actually finally did that. So, and a lot of it was like around the scope. Like I had that Leopold VX3, not a dialable scope, right? And it was just like the investment, like that. I think that was a $300 scope when I bought it. Well, my wife bought it for me for my birthday. And man, the investment to a $2,000, $2,500 scope was just like, it was not in my realm of acceptance. I just like that. This is never, I'm never going to do that. That's too much money. So, yeah.
Yeah, we, like, for coyote hunting, and then obviously, yeah, like rangefinders were handheld only, not like the best. You know, in the past, we would have a 200-yard zero.
Yeah.
And then I remember when we used to, like the Gunworks, their G7 online calculator, we'd go in and build it out and then tape a sheet to the side of our gun, and we'd just range and look at the sheet and dial it in. You know, we didn't know anything about aerodynamic jump or like, you know, Coriolis effect or anything that impacts a bullet like downrange, other than just like you enter the calculator in and then this is exactly what it does, you know? And even the old boxed ammo, you know, that it's supposed to drop a certain amount. Like there's so much.
Not even in the ballpark, man.
Bad information, which it never bit us because we never really shot. I mean, I bet like the 350 to 475 is kind of like a lot of those shots.
Yeah.
And so if you have a custom gun, you shoot. We definitely shot more than the average. We weren't shooting matches. We'd go to the range quite a bit, though.
Yep.
You know, we were good rifle shooters. I mean, you can probably attest to that when I started shooting matches.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely had a good base.
You already had a good foundation,
Things. And then I finally upgraded to like a Leica rangefinder. It was like maybe the 1600B or something, which was a really solid rangefinder. And then kind of had heard about Kestrels as far as like being able to take a wind speed and like call winds, you know, like the more you shoot, you're kind of like, well, how do you do wind? Like you need a wind meter. You're like, what is it?
Yeah.
And so the Kestrel was obviously a great tool for wind and your ballistics and your environmentals. And so I kind of got into that. And then I was kind of doing my own practice and training leading up to me going to work at Stone Glacier. I ran into you at a trailhead.
Yeah.
And then you were friends with Andrew, who worked at Stone Glacier. And so then we kind of crossed paths, and I was trying to like up my game a little bit. And then meeting you as well as Phil and Kaylin, like just, it seemed like shooting matches was an easy progression to just learn more and get better building positions and like testing myself under time.
Gives you those reps, yeah.
And then it was just like from there, just a flood of information.
For sure.
So
it's a rabbit hole that you can go as deep as you want to go, for sure.
Because like, so after the Weatherby, I killed an elk with that at like, I think that bull was like in the 700s. That was for the film border bulls.
Nice. And
I was in like a way downhill, like shooting uphill across canyon position, which I feel like I made a pretty good shot for the conditions and the position, but I did hit the bull a little high and a little back, which that bullet absolutely crumpled him. And he slid down the hill. You know, he didn't die right away, but he slid down to where he eventually died.
Yep.
But just like not spending all that time that I thought I'd spent to not, like that kind of got under my skin a little bit, you know, like in my head I should be able to make this shot, and then it's like, it was good, I killed the bull, like I don't feel bad about it, but it still wasn't perfect, and I just wanted to like try to figure out how to get even better at what I'm doing. And so, I think I built a gun shortly after that, but my short mag, that had been like my go-to hunting rifle. I shot the barrel out. I changed it into an EH1. I had a new carbon barrel spun up for it. Put a Night Force on there. Also messed around with the Callus, the 525i. And it was all in that same time that I switched to mil scopes.
Yep.
It was probably honestly like shooting with some military guys. We won't mention his name.
Yeah.
But they just explained the gun number as far as being able to call wind and how much easier it was to pick a rifle up, have an idea of wind, and be able to throw your gun up and make a wind call.
Yep.
Versus MOA was just, if I didn't have my calculator, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, why would anyone shoot MOA?
Yeah.
So I literally switched all my guns over to mil. And I remember the guys at Stone Glacier being like slow conversion of all those guys like over to mil.
Dude,
scopes.
just Americans think that it's like a metric system thing, and it's just a base 10 communication system, and it makes everything so much easier. The communication between the shooter and the spotter, and talking wind in your head and all that, it's way easier.
So, long story short, with mils versus MOA, if you're getting a new scope, you should heavily consider mils if you're not shooting it, because it's better.
Yep. Especially with the first focal plane scope, and then you have a tape measure in your scope all the time. The reticle in there, it tells you, like with a mil, most of them have 2/10 spacings, and so you can hold on the 2/10 mark or in between two of them, and you can dial out the exact clicks. You can measure exactly what you missed by or what you need to hold for. It's much easier for sure.
Yeah, definitely a better system. Definitely go first focal plane. Another thing that I learned over the years of shooting was like, never, ever, ever have your scope zoomed in all the way. Unless your max power is like 12, then I guess it's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
But just shooting on less power so you could actually like follow through the recoil and still be able to catch your bullet hit down range instead of just being blown off into oblivion and be like, did I hit him?
More field of view. The eye box or exit pupil is larger, so it's far more forgiving and easier to keep your eye centered behind the scope. That first focal plane, you don't have to think about what magnification you're on for making sure that the hash marks are accurate. Whatever magnification you're on, the hash marks are accurate at all. And that's definitely shooting on that lower power is going to make it way easier to find targets and stay on target for sure.
I've been running a bubble level for a long time. No one really had to convince me that was a good thing to have on there. We've definitely heard people try to argue it, but the math doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Shooting a level gun at distance will make you more accurate.
Yeah, you're going to miss on windage if you're not level.
Yep. But I'd say that the 300 short mag, the second barrel, for whatever reason, it just, after about 500 rounds, it just kind of was finicky. And I think that's when I started talking to you a little bit more about like reloading processes. That's when I learned about mandrelling, and then obviously got exposed to more expensive powder throwers. But yeah, I mean, I guess my overall reloading process didn't change much. I just, paid attention to a few things a little bit better, and like getting consistent neck tension, via a mandrel was an easy way to add consistency across my whole lot of ammo that I was pretty diligent before, but picked up a couple little things there. And then, kind of moved into like building my own guns from scratch, just an action pre-fit barrel. And so that allowed me to build a gun that I could hunt with or shoot under a hunter and then put a steel barrel on and compete with, which allowed me to shoot a lot more rounds. I built a 6.5 Creedmoor, which I was a hater on the 6.5 Creedmoor for a long time, because when it first came out, it was like, it was marketed as this like just the best caliber ever, like super accurate. You could shoot stuff way far with it. And I think it was mostly the fact that guys were shooting animals with it with, a little bit smaller size bullet further than they should be.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is stupid.
The Creedmoor is a funny thing, because it's definitely, people wanted to hate on it so much, but all the bullets are very high BC for bullet weight. It's been, I talked about it before, we're very like historically traditional to what our dads and granddads told us. And there's been this focus on heavy caliber, energy, all this stuff, in which the Creedmoor doesn't have, with the exception that it does, like with the high BC bullet, it catches up to a lot of like the 270s and 30-06s that a lot of people have been obsessed with for so long. So yeah, it's really funny, but like, as we know, because we've all killed a bunch of stuff with that 6.5 bullet now, or all the 6.5 bullets, that it's a great caliber for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely a perfect caliber for shooting matches and shooting a lot of rounds.
Yeah.
Inherently accurate. I mean, I've never really come across a 6.5 Creedmoor that wouldn't shoot.
I'll give you some money if you could find one, man. It's just like...
And then it's still enough recoil, because I shoot suppressed, to have to manage it versus a 6mm with a break.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I was still taking whatever I learned and applying it to a hunting application.
For sure.
And then I think it was during that time, that process, that just... I'd shot Manor stocks, but the LRH came out, because I kind of copied you on the EH1 with the, adjustable cheek piece.
The little lightweight cheek piece,
which was nice, but the EH1 was just like the first real stock that I was like, dude, this thing is so awesome. And definitely went from more old school, which we don't have one other than your super old gun, but like the grips on rifles have changed to this more vertical style, like Jared on here, this thing, and then a little bit bigger palm swell. So that was one thing that I learned, that how to actually like press the trigger.
Yeah.
And no one had ever really taught me. I just shot a lot of rounds with guns and like gotten good at it, which there's a lot of people that just have picked up guns and are good shots, but didn't know what I was actually doing.
For sure.
And so it's been cool to see more guns built around a good hand position and like a proper way to pull a trigger versus, the old swept back stuff was definitely better for just carrying your gun and offhand and just pulling it up.
Yeah, those definitely, the old school grips that everybody grew up with, they feel good, but they don't encourage good fundamentals where all pressures are directly in line with the bore. You can definitely execute good shots with those, but with the swept grip, it almost wants to give like a little up pressure, so you have to replace that with some thumb pressure to make sure, like, again, you'll hear me say like everything directly in line with the bore or equal and opposite. And equal and opposite is a lot more difficult. You have to be pretty tuned in to your pressures everywhere. And so all these new vertical grips, they just encourage really good fundamentals. They're really nice to shoot behind.
Yeah, so I pretty much went from like early 2010, 2020, sorry. Somewhere probably in there I started, 2019, 2020. Built that gun, started to shoot some club matches, probably shot 2,500 rounds that first year, which I'd went from 300-400 a year, which is quite a bit for
That's
most
still
hunters.
a lot for 100, yeah.
To 2,500, which obviously ammo's not cheap. It's not something that everyone's going to be able to do or want to like spend the money to do, but for me as a hunter, it was pretty invaluable. And I got a hell of a lot better at shooting guns and had some pretty good results competing, which can be addictive because like when you kind of jump into it and in the first 4 matches, like you're kind of like landing in some like top 10s, you're like, well, it wasn't that far to like first, like maybe I should push hard, which I have won a few matches, which has been fun, but then you just see the time investment to kind of live in that top realm is just so much. And I love hunting and not just shooting rifles to shoot rifles. So it's been a kind of interesting one to, we'll compete this year. I know that you're going to try to compete a little bit more.
Man, it's just tough in Montana. Our shooting season isn't year round really. And then spring is like my normal shooting season, but then spring bear's there too. So you're like, and then summer is like you got to get a little camping time in with the family before rifles or archery season starts on August 15th for antelope. So so we definitely prioritize hunting, but the matches are addicting, and there will probably be a time in my life where I commit a few years to really chasing the national scene. But.
So then, I kind of had some 6.5 Creedmoors, which made me kind of really like that 6.5 caliber bullet. And I had the 300 short mag, I had the 300 Weatherby, I wanted to build a 6.5, so I built this 6.5 PRC, which has definitely been probably one of my favorite rifles, just as the overall, like, you know, how it carries, how it shoots, the feature set, you know, in the past.
How it looks, man, is just like it photographs awesome, man.
I picked this camo color on this stock to match the kind of the OG 300 short mag, because that was like our first real hunting rifle and the one that has like definitely killed the most, spent the most time with me. So it was a little bit of a homage to that, and it looks sick. But you know, something that shooting matches helped, I think, kind of push into the industry was just shooting off tripods.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's a lot of different rail setups. Like this is my 28 Nosler, which I've got the hunter's rail from Salmon River. So you got ARCA and pick. This stock's got an ARCA and then pick built in, but in the past, it was just like a sling, or you'd put a Harris bipod on there, and then you'd like shoot over a knee or a log or a backpack. And now it's everything in the last 10 years has really changed a lot. And there's still, I'd say, a lot of like poor information out there on what a good hunting rifle looks like, at least as far as we're concerned. And I'd like to think that we're in kind of the more top echelon of guys who are good hunters across a lot of like Western style hunts, and guys who have went to matches and competed at a high level. So I don't think we're probably too far from the mark for most people as far as what we're running. And you see a lot of guys with similar rifles to these. I mean, a lot of guns kind of, for the most part, share a lot of the same feature sets. Just depends on how much money you want to spend and what's important to you. But
for sure.
So you went from 6.5 PRC.
Yeah, so this was, again, the impact action. This thing has lived in a lot of different configurations. Manners EH1. Once I was done with Leopold and went to Night Force, mostly around reticle selection. I really like their Mil C and Mil XT. So you'll see all my guns have Night Forces on them, just so I can have that consistent reticle. Man, the bipod thing is a thing that's changed a lot over the years. I used to not carry one either. I was always running a sling. I used to run the Montana sling from, is it Patrick? Is that guy's name up there?
I've never met
the Coyote Killer? Yeah. Regardless, the Montana sling, I used to run that. And now it's like, I don't even run a sling. Always have a bipod. There's a variety there that we'll talk about as we go. But yeah, once I started shooting Defiance. Defiance is a manufacturer here in Montana. And the impact actions before they were building the NGK, I think NGK, the skeletonized one. I wanted to build a lighter hunting rifle, right? So I went to I switched to Defiance. I was running the full tactical rail Defiance Ruckus on my match rifle, and then I, again with the lighter, wanting to go lighter, I ended up building this rifle, which it's a Defiance Anti-X. So it has the integral skeletonized lugs on there, and this gun, I never really plan a gun being one thing forever. Then so this gun was meant to be two different things. I wanted a rifle to go shoot NRL hunters with, and I also wanted a big boomer. Like I really like 300 Norma. I had another 300 Norma before, and that was on a Lone Peak Tie Fusion, but again, going to Defiance, I wanted a gun that I could kind of do everything with. So long action, anti-X. The Lapua bolt face for the 300 Norma is a full anti-X with the deep flutes bolt and the light bolt handle. But I also have a standard bolt face because I wanted to run a 284. And 284 is a kind of random caliber, but I just like it, and Lapua makes brass for it. And so I have a standard bolt face that is an actual ruckus bolt, so it's got very shallow flutes. It's a little bit heavier, bigger bolt handle, and just for NRL Hunter, I wanted that slick feel, right? That's like what we're after with the custom action. Everything's black nitrided on both of them. These are both the 284 and my 300 Norma barrel. These are both benchmark cut rifled carbon barrels. And then I changed the bottom metal. And again, it's just like kind of cool because it's essentially the same bones. I'll leave the same scope on. This is a Night Force Attacker 4-20, but I'll change the bottom metal and then be able to run a AICS. it's a 30-06 magazine, and I think there's 5s and 10s, and the 10 looks like an AK-47 and hangs down about that far because it's not double stack, it's single stack. And so I normally will just put the 5-rounder in there for NRL Hunter, and then if I'm going past that 5 rounds, I might want to just quit on the match because I'm probably not doing too good. But same thing. This is the Manners LRH, which I really enjoy these stocks. They come with the inch and a half dovetail ARCA rail up front, and then I always run a pick rail on all of my hunting rifles for the bipod to attach to. Mostly because it takes a lot for a bipod to fall off a pick rail where they can slide off an ARCA rail pretty easily. Mm-hmm. I always run really right stuff mounts. This is a BTC Pro, the twist style. They also have the SCLR, the lever lock one, but I like these because they with the same mount you can clamp on to pick or to ARCA. I can come back to ARCA. My bipod of choice for the last, it must be 4 or 5 years is the Hatch Out West. This is the 27-inch height one. It's just I still haven't let go of, I want to be able to shoot above sagebrush with my bipod I'm carrying. So it's a little heavier. It's 19 ounces. I'm really tempted by the Backlands and the Mountain Gear bipods. Just they're so light, but I haven't quite let go of being able to be able to get above sagebrush pretty easy. And I've actually it was on this bipod was on this rifle. And I shot an elk. It was at 164 yards. It's not far. You could probably shoot it offhand. But what was cool about it was in a sagebrush flat. And I just Richie Walters was with me. And I just pulled the hatch, got it fully deployed. And I put my knee, I got it into a squatting position, and I ran the buttstock, this gun on top of my knee, and shot that thing at 164 yards and watched the bullet hit. And I was watched it hit right in the heart. And he tried to take a step and fell over. And it's that's why I do it. Again, I could have shot off my backpack. I could have done other things, but I just like the ability to be able to shoot above that sagebrush height, right? And it's faster than, that one happened fast, where I have a tripod with me at all times, but it's not near as fast as having it on the gun. So.
Do you recommend a 300 Norma to guys?
I love a 300 Norma, but I don't recommend it for guys that don't have extremely good fundamentals, because that 300 Norma is super cool. The elk film that we did in Idaho, the over and out with Stone Glacier, that was a 300 Norma at 727 yards, 245 Burger, and
just hammered him.
Yeah, just jellified all of his vital. It was awesome, but that gun, that caliber is gonna recoil pretty good. Even when I'm running the Thunder Beast Ultra 7, this is a Gen 1, but it doesn't cut out the recoil completely, and if your fundamentals aren't good, I'd rather have you shooting a light like a 6.5 PRC or even a 6.5 Creedmoor, where you're not going to be flinching. Because if I shoot nothing but a 300 normal all year, there's a good chance I'm going to develop a flinch as well. And that's why I like practicing with my 6 BRX, 6.5 Creedmoor. My 223s are I've shot this rifle more this year than any gun I think I've shot in a long time, just because it's so cheap to shoot and it doesn't recoil. The recoil is good to make sure that a certain amount of recoil is good to make sure that you are executing good fundamentals. But just getting hammered by a big 338 Lapua or something all the time, I would not recommend.
Yeah. And then you'll kind of notice in our gun builds that we try to keep everything very consistent from rifle to rifle, even if it's the same stock or triggers or actions. Mm-hmm. That way we can train on something and jump right onto a hunting rifle, even in a bigger caliber like a 300 Norma, or I have a 28 Nosler, and just it's the same thing. Yep. Obviously we know we're gonna get hit with a little more recoil, but there's no real new learning curve to learn the feel and the intricacies of a new rifle. It's just very consistent gun to gun. Even as much as we've talked about, because both Impact and Defiance have come out with 75-degree bolt throws on their actions. And even that is funny as it sounds, you're talking about if you need a quick follow-up shot on an animal and you've been running a 90-degree bolt throw all year, and then you've got it now your hunting rifle's a 75 or vice versa, right? You'll see people short stroke a lot, but then you'll see guys just flounder when when they switch from a short degree bolt throw to a longer degree bolt throw. And that's to your point. But there's also an element of how easy or hard that is to run.
Yep. Yeah. So
which is why I chose not to go that route too.
100%. The 90-degree bolt throw is going to give you the lightest bolt lift, because every time, if your bolt's closed and you fire and the firing pin drops, when you open it back up, you are recocking the firing pin and the firing pin spring back. And the steepness of that caulking ramp is affected by the amount of bolt, how many degrees you have. So the more degrees of bolt throw you have, the shallower that caulking ramp could be, and it's just going to feel lighter, right? And all that contributes to staying on target. When you watch guys like lift their bolt up and the gun comes off the ground, it's like you're having a really hard time staying on target there. And so then once you get it back in, now you're looking for the animal again. Well, with us, we've got a solid position. We can really like bolt throw. We can open the bolt. We're watching the animal the whole time, run the bolt, and we've never taken our eye off the animal the whole time. That's, I think, the benefit of a custom action and that 90-degree bolt throw.
Yep. Nice. I tried some other scopes, but Night Force has definitely been the most consistent staple in our rifles, as well as a lot of our good friends. There's other brands that make great scopes, but just from like what we've had in our arsenal and used, it just seems like the Night Force, they just run. They just do the things they're supposed to do. They hold zero, they track. The reticle options are pretty good in them. The general glass quality and clarity is good.
Pretty good.
You know, it's not the best, but it's good for all the applications, and durable for hunting scenarios. So you'll probably see us jump around and use some different stuff, just because it's good to always be kind of, I think, testing things a little bit. I ran the Collis, their 5 to 25 DLR, which has some different features. I mean, it's got a parallax right under the elevation turret, which was pretty nice. It's kind of got a spin top on some of these things. It has some different features.
Left side windage for a right-handed shooter.
Yep. Has a little built-in tool, which now a lot of the scopes are going to toolless, but the Night Force is not toolless right now. So that's nice. So we like to tinker and try different things. It's how you land on kind of your final choices as far as rifles and what works best for you. You could definitely take people's advice, people that you respect or think have went through a lot of that process to get to a good point. But we're kind of guys that want to try a bunch of stuff. Just on this table, we have 4 different bipods. Jared has kind of the Sky Pod, the single pull, which I've hunted with as well, which is a really good option. He's got the Hatch Out West, which is a great hunting option for a higher elevation. And then I kind of had looked into some lighter weight stuff, which both these bipods are out of New Zealand, the Backlands and the Mountain Gear. And I've had these both probably a little over a year now, so from pretty early on. And they're both really, really solid. If you follow MDT, you'll see that they bought the Mountain Gear bipod, so that'll be under the MDT family of gear here very soon. Backlands is still New Zealand owned by Ethan, and both really good bipods that still give you quite a bit of flexibility, to go up to a fairly high level, just not quite above sage. But we're always carrying tripods for glassing and spotting and shooting, and so I'm not as concerned. I also came in touch with the guys from Ableco, and so I've been shooting their Theorem suppressor, which I would say is right on par. I think the 2 best as far as build quality and companies that really care about their product and want to build a really high quality product, something that's quiet, repeatable, precise. To me, I think Ableco and Thunder Beast are kind of the top 2. Obviously, I'm friends with the guys at Ableco, so I'll probably lean that way a little bit more going forward, but they're both great suppressors. And the only reason you see a muzzle brake on that is I took it to Mexico on a Coues deer hunt, and they don't let you take suppressors. So this is probably a good day to pull that back and give it back to Jared. So
you already tried to sneak a scope in. You weren't going to try and sneak a suppressor into.
And then like rings, we've kind of battled with, not battled, but like
a little bit.
Rings can definitely be an issue. There's good sets and there's bad sets, and there's different styles and weights. 3 of the 4 guns here have the American Rifle Co. M-brace rings on them, and they're super beefy. They've got 2 screws, one to the rail, one on top. They're really quick and easy to mount. And
doesn't change the level of your scope when you're tightening the ring up, which is great, versus the normal top cap with 4 or 6 screws where you'll chase them back and forth. I've ran Hawkins for a long time too, but when you're getting those level, you want to make sure that it's staying level to the action in the scope body when you're tightening that down. One thing I'd recommend on rings across the board is make sure you guys are lapping your rings. If anything, it's just going to tell you that everything's straight. You could see as the finish starts to wear away, if it's all coming off evenly, then you're good to go. If you're seeing a highest point, like where the finish is only coming off from 1 point or 2 points, you're going to want to keep going until you get that all flat, because that's one issue that I've ran into in the past, where I just had some rings that, and the thing to remember is like you're mounting those rings to an action, and it's like there's just manufacturing tolerances, and sometimes tolerances stack, sometimes they cancel each other out, but make sure you're lapping your rings.
Yep. And then I kind of wanted to build a bigger, heavier bullet. I considered building a 300 short mag with a 215, but I felt like I'd kind of already done the 300 short mag thing, and it was proven to be a little bit more challenging to find guys with the right expertise to chamber a barrel for 215s, which has kind of been a little bit of a newer trend, seeing guys shoot 215s out of 300 short mags. So there's not quite as much gunsmith experience, which I could have found someone, but 28 Nosler always kind of has been, to me, a pretty dang good killing hunting round.
Big hot
And
rod.
I figured it would kind of round things out from having a 6.5 caliber, 7 caliber, and then a 30 cal. So I built 28 Nosler, shooting 195s, going probably 30-50. Did a bunch of reloading. Snowy Mountain Rifles chambered this barrel, they build a lot of 28 Noslers, but for some reason, I think, however the chamber was cut, it definitely was a little finicky for a while as far as heavy bolt lift. Even when I was backing my rounds way down, I don't know if just through that whole process of shooting it's eroded the throat in there enough to just, I don't know what was going on, but it hammers. It shoots super accurate.
Shot good, yeah.
It's always shot really good, really low SDs. Like, it was just sometimes the extraction, was a little heavy. I think through all of this and like building our own guns now and changing things around, like you'll definitely run into I've had some weird little quirks where I've been saved by Jared and Logan.
It's just funny stuff that, again, it's all coming from different manufacturers, and a lot of times what we run into is either like magazine issues, or if you're doing a BDL style with a hinged floor plate, the Wyatt's box doesn't always fit just right. So there's always something that you might be tinkering with. Your best bets, like, is most likely getting one of the best actions on there, like one of the top actions that are on the market, and putting in a chassis. That's a really easy way to go. They all have bedding blocks built in. You don't have to put bottom metal in. They're gonna work more often than not. You're not gonna run into an issue with a chassis. I really like walking around with a stock in the woods when it's cold. Just feels really nice to hold a carbon fiber stock, but it's a conversation you need to have whether you do a mini chassis or if you want to bed it and do pillar beds or whatever. So the stock most of the time adds maybe an extra layer to it, and then you have to put the bottom metal in and make sure that everything's fit in right. But overall, they're pretty straightforward to put together nowadays.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't think there's been too much crazy change. Shot a 300 short mag with 168s for a long time. Shot 6.5 Creedmoor and PRC with 140 to 156 is kind of that same bullet range, and then I've shot 195s out of my 28 Nosler and 215s out of 300 Weatherby mag. So I think done some pretty standard stuff. I think guys can get way too in the weeds on what's the hot cartridge, which cartridge is better, yada yada. Like every single rifle that I've had is killed just fine. If
you put a bullet where it belongs, that's what matters. Yeah. It's like which caliber it does it. Like what are you into? Like it definitely, that's not a decision that you need advice from really anybody on. As long as you're running a good hunting bullet, which caliber do you like? What turns you on about it? And because we've ran across the board, even my 223 back there, I'd have no issue going out and killing deer and elk with it. Yeah. But yeah, another thing that we haven't talked about, I wanted to jump into, because you and I both like a jewel trigger. Yeah. However, there's been some changes with jewel, and I don't even know if they're in business anymore. Yeah. But we both really enjoyed a jewel trigger, and I tried a few of the newer ones and just had a hard time with it. So I'm not buying jewels anymore. What are you doing? Like, where'd you end up?
I'm still rolling the jewels. I mean,
Are you into all of them?
No, this one's a jewel.
Okay, that one's a jewel. Okay.
I got the Trigger Tech Diamond Special.
You got the diamond in that one? Is that red?
In this guy, yeah. Diamond. Which the Trigger Techs are great. The jewel is what I started on. It's my first really light, crisp, just good trigger, and I just... Yeah.
So here's
what I like.
Here's what, with the Trigger Tech, everybody loves the feel of a Trigger Tech, and it's like it's got a hard wall and it breaks like glass. What I love about the jewel is it's almost a ghost break, right? Like it breaks very clean, but like you almost don't feel it break. It's not like a hard crisp.
It's not like a snap like it broke. It's just like boom.
It just breaks. And I personally like that. The way that I execute a shot on a gun is very similar to the way I execute a shot on a bow, where I apply pressure till it breaks. And I don't need to feel that ghost break. The crisp, like glass-like break. I like the ghost style break. So I've actually switched over to Bix and Andes on all my rifles. And they are similar to the jewel. They're far more complicated to adjust right, where the Trigger Tech has poundage. That's it. You have one adjustment. You can't adjust sear engagement. You can't adjust over travel or anything. Where with the Bix and Andes, they're a little bit more complicated, but you can adjust pull weight. All of these have single stage or two stage, but I can adjust pull weight. I can adjust how much sear engagement there is, how much over travel there is, and I personally like that for my shot process style. And there's actually I don't set my trigger up to not move. There's a slight bit of movement, and it's just like when I execute an archery shot, where I'm squeezing, I'm just applying pressure till it breaks. And again, that's just my preference for the way I like to execute. So, but there's a lot of really good triggers out there. And one thing I'll say, there's not a trigger that you can tell me or that we've used that has not failed on us or our friends. Trigger Techs, Bix and Andes, Jewels, Timneys, there's not been a trigger that we have not had fail on us. And this is just something to keep in mind, that's the Trigger Tech the trigger, it's interfaced with the firing pin, where like there's just a very sensitive little interfaces in there. And oftentimes when they get really dirty, they'll either won't hold the firing pin back when you go and close the bolt, or you'll get NDs and that type of stuff. So just be careful with your rifles. Yeah,
one thing that changed as I shot more was I never ever put a round in the chamber unless I'm on target. Mm-hmm. You know, you still see a lot of guys put one in and turn their safety on. That safety stuff can still happen. That round can still go off. If you don't put one in the chamber, nothing can happen. Yeah. And so, kind of like we talked about with running a good action and just, you know, having your face on the gun and looking through your scope, there's no reason that you can't get on the gun, put one in very quick, quiet, and easy, and stay on target, and just be safer in the field. Yep.
There's even when we're hunting, I don't think there's a time that we've got a round in the chamber. No. It's literally not. Our position's built. We could see the animal in our scope, and we run the bolt very quietly and shoot them. And then the round's in there for long enough for us to make a shot, and that's it.
Yeah, and if I'm going to get off the gun, I'll usually cock my bolt and just open it like a little bit, like an inch or something, so I can just go forward on the bolt when I get back on the gun. Yeah. Not that you can't use the safety, but it's not 100%.
Yeah. Things happen.
Yeah. As far as we should just do our recommendations now that we've went through all the process for people, and I would say My recommendation cartridge-wise would be I think most hunters shouldn't be shooting over 600 yards. Mm-hmm. And if you don't spend a lot of time shooting rifles, I think 6.5 is the caliber you should be looking at. Very shootable, very accurate, all the killing power you need for realistically all big game, in the Western U.S. Even Alaska, you could argue. Yeah. Components are pretty easy to find.
Factory ammo options.
6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC, generally shooters. Can't really go wrong there.
They're both great calibers to learn the reload on. If you want to start with factory ammo and then learn the reload, it's really hard to go wrong. Like with the 41 grains H40 350 behind any 140 grain bullet in a 6.5 Creedmoor, I could pretty well promise it's going to shoot.
Yeah.
So
then I'd say if you shoot quite a bit and you do want something bigger, I built a 28 nozzler just to be able to have the ability to reach out to 1,000 yards. It was mostly, honestly, for wolf hunting. This would be what I would take if I go wolf hunting, which I don't seem to get out as much as I ever want to. And it's just super fun if you do shoot a lot to have a big boomer, because you can drop bombs super deep. It's fun to go shoot rocks at 1,800 yards with a 28 or a 300 Norma versus, your 6.5 could get out there, but it's going to start losing steam and kind of flying all over. But definitely a harder rifle to control and drive well. That said, I shot my mule deer at 400 yards and watched it hit him. And just because it is a larger caliber cartridge bullet, you should, if you're doing it right, still be able to watch that hit. It's just more challenging for people that don't have a lot of trigger time.
For sure. Yeah, I get asked all the time on what caliber, and it's a conversation that it's an answer I don't really have a great answer to, other than what caliber do you feel most confident in putting the bullet where it belongs? Mm-hmm. And that's where back the 6.5s and the lighter recoiling rounds, for most guys, their fundamentals aren't what they think they are. And a 6.5 is going to allow them to shoot more often, not get beat up by the recoil, and then actually learn the goal is to shoot more rounds every year, so that you guys can answer that for yourself. The bigger question the bigger piece of it that I would challenge you guys to answer for yourselves is, how do you like to shoot animals? Are you a shoulder shooter? Do you like to just shoot them in the lungs? Do you like an exit, or do you not like? Do you want it to dump all its energy or all its shrapnel into it? So that's a question I would advise you to do a little research on. We both really like shooting burgers. When killed a lot of stuff. Honestly, we've killed a lot of stuff with all the brands of bullets out there, but I still lean towards burger. I like it to dump all of it's not even energy. I like that the bullet comes apart. I don't shoot shoulders. I shoot just in the lungs, kind of top of heart and lungs, and that bullet comes apart and destroys everything. And I'm not necessarily looking to drop them in their tracks. Animals die from suffocating and bleeding to death unless you do sever the central nervous system or the spinal cord. But there are guys that want an exit all the time. That's where I'd advise maybe looking at either an AccuBond or a copper solid type of thing. Or if you like shooting shoulders, same thing. I'd run like a Barnes Tip TSX. That's why I had really good luck with those on that 270, and you're most likely gonna get an exit with those things. They open up, but the whole core of the bullet stays together, and it's probably gonna exit. So again, just decide on where you like to shoot animals and what type of performance you're looking for.
Yeah, and the bullet selection is as important as the cartridge, for sure. Which, again, you could get down the weeds there, but you can look at there's some pretty standardized bullets, especially in the burger lineup, that are just killers. A lot of people have shot a lot of animals with. There's always outliers, regardless of what you're doing, but burgers have always sort of been my choice and have worked for me. Even though there's guys that would just argue till their deathbed that it's the worst bullet ever, but make up your own mind. Then as far as the gun, I think we both probably agree that the action is realistically the foundation of your entire rifle. I'd say action and optic would probably be my top two priorities in a gun. As far as long-term investment into a rifle that could sort of adapt to some different forms. We're running Defiance right now, which, got a Defiance the first time, back with the Snowy Mountain guys, and knew that Defiance was a Montana company, which was always cool to support kind of the home team. And so still been rocking it over 10 years later, and they're even better now than they were back then.
For sure. Yeah, and that's the barrel's where the magic happens and all this stuff. But I would challenge you guys to look at your barrels as consumables and try and shoot those things out as often as you can. The more often you're shooting out barrels, the better you are as a shooter. So a lot of people look at it as like that this is a forever. And to me, the action, scope, those are forever. But that barrel, ideally, if I'm not shooting through that thing every couple of years, then I'm not shooting enough. So that's gonna be your bet. You could read on the internet all you want, but going out and putting rounds down range is how you're gonna learn to answer these questions for yourselves.
Yeah, I built the 6.5 PRC last spring, and it already has 1,400 rounds through it. So I'm about shot out on that thing. We'll go until it's shot out, but
until it starts showing you that it's
that's pretty abnormal for most people. But you should shoot a barrel out in, I'd say, 3 to 5 years for sure.
Yep. Unless you have so many guns.
If you're serious about hunting in the West and not just taking, sub 300-yard shots in the woods for whitetails or whatever, like you should be shooting rounds.
100%. And that's kind of like with this gun, I set it up as a 284. I go shoot an arrow hunter, and then I throw the 300 normal barrel because a 300 normal is running 90+ grains of powder every shot, where that 284 I'm in the 50s. And so I'm just components and stuff is cheaper. I've got make that 300 normal barrel last a little bit longer, save that for hunting season, and then that 284 is the one that's going to get shot out a little quicker.
And then barrels, there's a lot of routes I feel like you can go with barrels. Any of the reputable names, the Proof, the Benchmarks, the Bartlands.
Yep.
There's some other ones out there.
They all make good barrels.
They're really all, for the most part, it's hard to find a bad barrel, I'd say, with reputable manufacturers. Not that you can't, but it's usually not the problem, in my experience at least.
Most of the time you hear people talk, because like every manufacturer of any product, I don't care if it's bubble gum or whatever it is, they have a chance of putting out a bad product, right? And it's oftentimes with barrel manufacturers, it's not even the manufacturer, it's the steel mill that they got the steel from. So just have a little patience with them if you guys do end up with a barrel that's not, because they're all these companies, they take care of you. That's the beauty of our industry. They typically will take care of their customers, but again, there's probably not a barrel company out there. The newer companies coming out, they're all putting out pretty dang good barrels. It's a technology that's pretty well known. Button rifle or cut rifled. All my rifles are cut rifled, but at the same time, button rifles do awesome too. We've got friends in the industry that all their barrels are button rifled, and and there's even the new technology. I know Carbon 6 is doing that, ECM or whatever. And they're putting out good barrels too. So, but what I would advise, whether you're getting pre-fits or working through a gunsmith, oftentimes they have a manufacturer that they prefer to work with, and so they have a good relationship. And if you do happen to get a good one, they're going to be able to stand behind that a little bit easier if they have a relationship with the manufacturer. So, again, it's just kind of determining how much you want to do it on your own, or if you want to have a relationship with the gunsmith.
Barrel length. I know guys get all hung up on barrel length, and apparently shorter is better, but it's not always better. I'd say 22 and 24 is should be 95% of the hunting rifles out there. Yeah, you could go shorter, you could go longer. Yeah. 22 and 24, this is 24 with a 7-inch can. I would take this on any hunt that I've ever done. Yeah. No problem.
This thing was actually set up as my 284 when you shot that elk, and that's a 26-inch barrel with it. And I would argue that we're in a pretty savage spot with a giant long gun, and I personally don't like going shorter on the barrel length because you're just giving up velocity for free. Yeah. And I don't like to get velocity by putting too much powder in the case, but if I carry a couple extra inches or 4 inches on my barrel, that's just free velocity that I'm getting. Not that you need it to kill stuff, but it definitely helps you buck wind a little bit better, and it does extend your range. Not that we're trying to shoot 1,000 yards or anything, but having a little bit more impact velocity makes sure that bullet's going to perform the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. And then, hunting perspective, for me, shooting all across the board, I'm a suppressor guy. I'd say buy a good can that is not going to hinder your performance of your rifle, but is also extremely repeatable. All my suppressors I can take on and off on a hunt and trust that my zero is not going to shift. So figuring out how these mount to the end of your barrel is, I'd say, pretty important. I run the Thunder Beast CB brake with both my Thunder Beasts, obviously, and then my Theorem. You can buy a little Echo machine adapter. There's some other hub adapters so that I can just use my suppressors on all of my rifles, whether it's Thunder Beast or Able, so that's nice. And the way that the suppressor's made up on that CB mount on that shoulder just seems to be really consistent for me.
Yeah. One kind of cool thing about the Ables that I'm really liking is just that their modularity now. You can replace the end cap. If you're shooting a 6 or 6.5, you can get a smaller end cap. If you're shooting a 30 cal, you can get the bigger end cap, and they have that brake that's coming out as well that you can be able to throw a brake on there if you want to go use it for competition. Still have the suppression, but get a little bit more recoil reduction out of it. So pretty cool cans, just that the modularity of it. It's hard to argue with. Both of us have had so much success with the Thunder Beast Ultra line, particularly Ultra 7. Great cans. So I know there's a bunch of other good cans on the market, but both companies support the shooting sports as well, which is great. I like the support companies that support us. So,
What do you think about scopes?
Yeah, scopes are funny, man. There's a ton of scopes out there. In reality, any of them that are Japanese made are probably coming out of the same couple factories. Again, I make a big decision-making point for me going to Night Force is the reticle selection. They work really well for the way my brain thinks, and when they have a good reputation for holding zero and good enough glass. But there is a lot of the cost on them is they're up there. I've never bought a scope that was not used off of Sniper's Hide or Rock Slide. I said that before, but if there's some other companies out there and their scopes are made in the same factory and they're pretty good options if you like their reticle or
for sure. I think 4 power on the low end into the 20s is probably pretty normal. This NX8's 4 to 32, but it lives at about 8 to 12.
Yep. It's nice to have the 32 power when you're zeroing.
Yep.
But we'd never shoot a match or an animal at that power. No.
I'd say haven't really seen anything crazy like tube diameter, objective. I mean, you could argue light transmission all day long. That's usually not the compelling factor of why people miss a shot. I think mill scopes are the way to go. First focal plane, and at the very least, a scope needs to hold zero.
That's the most important.
If it doesn't hold zero, it's basically worthless.
Yep, needs to hold zero and track reliably. If you guys have a scope you're not sure about, do a tall target test. If it's easiest one, most people will go to 100 yards and dial 10 mils and back and forth, shoot a shot, dial 10 mils, shoot a shot, take 10 mils out, shoot, and you should have 2 groups that are exactly 36 inches apart. And ideally you want to do that with a level line. Yep. It's a good way to make sure that your scope's doing what it needs to. And then obviously the drop test, Rock Slide's got a huge section of drop tests on scopes. Check that out, and you can do it yourself as well just to make sure that your setup is working. One thing I'll advise you on, it's not always the scope that's failing. Sometimes it is in the rings. I mentioned that before. Sometimes it's in the mounting system. It can even be if your action's not bedded. Just things moving around, changing the harmonics of things could change your point of impact.
Yeah, a lot of you guys and some of my old guns had it where you mounted a rail to the top of the action. All of our actions now have a rail just machined into it, so there's not another point of possible disconnect or looseness. So we already kind of touched on rings. Just get something that is going to hold your scope securely in place and allow your scope to hold zero. Yeah. Level's super important. Jared doesn't have a level on.
This one just doesn't
300 Norma because it's not in. It's such a big boomer that you don't even need to get a level.
It shoots so flat you don't need it, man. No, I just don't. This thing's not actually set up in hunting mode. Things have been moving around, and I just slapped this guy on there for the video. But it's probably going to go back to 284 here pretty soon, so I can shoot some inter-rail hunter.
And then stocks. I think the grip, the vertical grip on a stock's really important. How you interface with that part of the grip, and then not every stock, you don't always need an adjustable cheek piece. You can do stuff with rings and stuff, but I mean, if I can get an adjustable cheek piece without a huge weight penalty, I'll usually go that route just so I can get it exactly where I want it. And then I think, on the Manners and some other stocks now, like having the mini chassis where we don't have to bed this and we just pull stuff in and out.
So nice.
So nice. Like, I love this McMillan stock, like as much as this Manners, but it's bedded to this one action.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really do anything else with it unless I want to tear the bedding out and rebed it. So that's the big downside to the McMillan versus the Manners with the mini chassis. And then obviously, a lot of stocks are coming with built-in, like the Manners has a built-in ARCA and pick. The LRH just had an ARCA and I swapped that out, but I think having, good mounting points for your tripod and your bipod are really important
for sure.
Kind of slice that, however.
And it's kind of cool. If you guys order a stock, I would recommend just having them put extra threads in there. Because what I'll do, like this is set up for hunting right now with the pick rail and then the ARCA, but similar to Zach's rifle, when I go to shoot NRL Hunter, I pull both of those out and I've got a couple extra mounting points and I'll throw a full length Salmon River rail on there just because I don't need the, the security of a Picatinny rail when I'm at a match. I want really easy, I want to be able to slide my bipod back and forth. I want to be able to mount my tripod in wherever. So I'll do a full length ARCA rail. And then I just unscrew that and put it back in hunting mode with the pick and the ARCA. So it's just important when you guys order your stocks. Like sometimes you get them, they are the way they come if you find them in stock. But if you're going to order the things, make sure that you just ask them for those extra little points there. And same thing with the quick detach studs. Like if you're interested in running a sling or anything like that, they could throw those things in. You may not always use them. I think I've got them on this rifle. So this is an OBI mount. And this guy just allows me, I'm not going to force it out right now, but Sky Thomas, who invented the SkyPod, he owns the company OBI. And he has mounts on your that you can put on your pack, you can put on your tripod, and having these quick detach points on the rifle. I've got one on the bottom side there. It just gives you a really easy place to carry the rifle. You don't have to have a sling. I don't do that for hunting, but again, for NRL Hunter, it's really nice when I'm going between stages. I could just hang it off my pack strap, and it's on the right-hand side. It doesn't mess with me when I'm shooting. So just little details that's important to think about.
Trigger, we already kind of talked about that a little bit. I'd say anything that just has a clean break without, having travel in it before it breaks is good. Doesn't have to be a jewel that goes less than a pound. I think 1.5 pounds to 3 pounds, anything in there is great. You should be able to really jump on any gun regardless of the trigger and shoot it. It's the same process. It's just is a little nicer not to have to mentally fight through a heavier trigger.
And just touching on that, so people think that a light trigger is so that you could cheat the fundamentals, right? Mm-hmm. Like you just kind of get it on target and you just barely touch it and it goes off. The reason for a lighter trigger in my mind is you're just speeding up your shot timing.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, you guys should not be just commanding the trigger and saying now. You should just be building pressure, adding more and more and more and more until it breaks. A heavier trigger, it's just longer shot time. It takes me longer to get through to add that amount of poundage. So a lighter trigger, I definitely run lighter in matches and I turn them up for hunting. But no matter what, it just is going to speed up shot time. And that's how you guys should be looking at it, not so that you could cheat your fundamentals or you can command it and say now. Always make sure that you're just increasing pressure until that shot breaks.
Yep. And then we got bottom metal. Bottom metal is just kind of make it work.
Lots of
hold a
variety.
Magazine. I mean, Hawkins is pretty tough to beat.
Hawkins is great. The new MDT is pretty sick because you can use the detachable box mag, but you can lock it off. That's pretty sick. I've ran the American Precision Arms RTG bottom metal. Theirs is pretty sick too. A lot of good variety out there. Hawkins definitely has a great system because they have the Hunter flush mags that works great with their bottom metal. So use that on a bunch of rifles.
So yeah, if you're looking to build a gun, I would say build. I'm a quality over quantity guy, so I would err on the side of just take your time to get the quality parts and build something that's good. I would recommend going and just shooting some matches with whatever you have now and get on some other guys' guns and make sure you actually like it and it fits you before you drop a bunch of coin on this stuff. I don't really know anywhere, unless you're in really rural America somewhere where there's not a match that you can go to and shoot some of this kind of stuff.
It's nationwide now for sure.
So I would recommend shooting some guns before you drop $6,000 on a rifle or whatever it might be. What about factory guns? I'm not as in the loop on that, but like if guys are looking at factory guns.
So factory guns, what I advise everybody is buy a Ruger American. Like an American Predator, they come with detachable box mags. They come with the muzzle threaded already. Some of them have brakes, but they're already threaded to throw a suppressor on. You're gonna be, man, you can find those things for $350 to $550. And for guys low on budget, I would spend all the money on the scope, find a scope that you like. I would buy it used on rock slide or sniper's hide unless you got the money. But if you're trying to do it cheap, again, like I'd probably, if I was gonna go really cheap, this still an expensive scope, but I would put all the money into a Night Force NX8 4-32. It's a tried and true scope. The company stands behind it. If anything does go wrong, I'd put all the money there and I'd go get a Ruger American and I would try and shoot that thing out as quickly as I could. I'd put all the money into the scope and ammo. The Ruger Americans are known for shooting great. They're not going to have the user interface that we are accustomed to, but that's not going to make you a better shooter. It's not going to contribute to the accuracy of the rifle. So I would look at that as a throwaway gun, though. If I shot out the barrel, I would not be rebarreling it. If you want to do a factory option that's maybe a little that you're going to keep with you, you're going to, whatever it is, your action you're going to keep, and you're going to put it in a stock or a chassis, then I'd be thinking about the Tikka. Tikkas are, I think you can get, I think all of them are going to be coming with threaded barrels again. You can get them with detachable box mags, and it's great to go shoot an NRL hunter. You can shoot heavy gun matches if you want to, and then go hunting with the same rifle. Same thing, look at the barrel as a consumable. Just with the Tikka versus the Ruger American, I'm going to keep that action around, so if I shoot the barrel out, I'm going to throw a new barrel on, I'm going to keep that thing. But those are the two that, there's a bunch of, every manufacturer makes a pretty good shooting gun. It's a lot of the new cartridge design contributes a lot to all these guns shooting so well nowadays. But those are the two that I highly recommend. The Ruger American, especially, just because they have a really good reputation for shooting well, and they're just so inexpensive. And then you can put the rest of the money into the scope and ammo.
Awesome. Well, I think that covers it. A lot of info in there. A lot of names and numbers and things, but if you guys have more questions, definitely shoot us a message. It's kind of similar to photography. There's a lot of ways that you can do it. Find something that works and you can articulate why it works and why it is the way it is. You know, we can do that with all of our guns. Every single component, I can tell you why I own it and why I picked it. And so if you can do that, you'll come to a good solution for yourself. And
tons of good options out there. So hit us with comments. We'd like to know if you guys like this type of content. Ask us questions. I'll try and answer anything that you guys come up with on there, and try and help point you guys in the right direction. So
cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.